What's up, guys? It's Tater here, and today I'm going to teach you how to tie your shoes. Nah, I'm just kidding. This video is about the story behind this big bass on the wall behind me. Um, this is my 10-pound bass. A lot of people say, oh, it doesn't quite look 10 pounds, but I promise you it was. We had the scales to prove it. So this was caught. I want to say I was about 16 or 17 years old, living in Visalia, California, um, just east of Visalia, California, about 15, 20 miles. There's a lake called Cahuilla Lake, and my dad and I used to fish it all the time, predominantly in the springtime, in the summertime. It was open at night, so and down there in the Central Valley of California, it gets super hot. It's real smoggy and stuff like that. So the night fishing there in the summertime was amazing because you get out there on the lake. There's a nice little breeze coming through. It's like mid 70s. Sometimes it was even in the 80s because it's that hot down there sometimes. We're talking like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. It's that hot. But so this particular trip, we got there, I want to say right about dusk, launched the boat and everything. We get out there, and out across the lake, if you go straight out from where the first boat ramp was, there's a cove that goes back in there. It's like a little finger cove. It goes pretty far. And we used to have a lot of success back there. We'd hit one side of it, go all the way down to the bottom, come back out the other side, which runs along the dam. And that particular day, we had went down there, and I don't remember if we caught a lot of them. I mean, I'm sure we caught a few, but I don't think it was a very productive night, at first. Long story short, so the lake was kind of low that summer, and we had hit that cove, and we went back across the lake, back towards the first boat ramp. There was a set of houseboats there, and you could go, if you're looking out from the first boat ramp, you can go off to the left, and there's a little kind of a cove there where people would always walk the bank and fish and stuff like that. But if you followed that bank, it would eventually connect with the dam. It would go from grass up to like a rocky, obviously like a dam. And so we hit that cove, and we were fishing through there. I think we caught a few, and we're coming up to the point where the grass meets the rocks and the dam, and it's like 10:30 at night, and I'm super tired. I'm sitting there almost falling asleep. Hold my rod in my hand, and fishing was kind of slow, and we were fishing soft plastics, Texas rig on the bottom, just hopping it off there. You get a sinker and a little bead. We like to use beads in between the sinker and the eye of the hook, and what that does is whenever you're twitching it and bouncing it off of rocks or the bottom or structures or anything, it makes a clacking noise, which sometimes will attract the fish in. And that particular night, I was using a little 4-inch pumpkin seed lizard. And matter of fact, I don't know if you can see it here, but this little dangling piece here, there you go. That little dangling piece in his mouth is the exact lure I caught him on. So anyway, we get to the point where the grassy bank meets the rocks of the dam, and like I said, I'm falling asleep. I'm sitting there just kind of dead sticking it, not really using a lot of technique or finesse because I'm super tired, and I'm about ready to call it a night. And we're sitting there, and I'm half asleep, and I'm sitting here messing with my rod, and I kind of pull up on it a little bit, and I feel some tension there, but it's not moving. You can tell when a fish is biting, especially on soft plastics. If you have the right rod, you'll feel everything, every vibration from the fish hitting that lure, following up your line, coming down through your rod into your hand that you're holding on to the rod with. Normally you'll feel that little bit of like a peck, 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 and then they'll kind of slowly start to move off with it. I didn't feel that. I just felt tension. So I'm pulling up, and typically that means you're possibly hung up on something, or you're just kind of pulling it out from under a rock or over a tree limb or something like that. And so I'm kind of pulling on it, and I feel like there's a lot of tension, like maybe I am on a rock, but I don't feel like I can't move it. So my dad always told me, if you ever think you have a bite but you're not sure, set the hook. because you don't know. You know, you never know. It could be a big bass. It might be a rock. You might get hung up, break your line, whatever. But if you don't set the hook, you're never gonna know. So I'm sitting there and I pull on it a little bit more, and I'm, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get hung up, but whatever. And I was super tired, so I just set the hook. And about the time I did that, I felt the line move, and I was like, oh crap, this is a fish. And I'm reeling, and my dad's like, oh, you got one? I'm like, yeah, I got a nice one, and I can feel the pressure on there, but it's not fighting super hard yet. And so, I'm fighting this fish for a couple minutes, and I'm starting to get it up, and it's almost like dead weight, but you can feel the fish on there. And sometimes these bass are weird, like, you can hook into a 2-pound bass that fights like a 5-pound bass, or you might hook into a 5-pound bass that fights like a 1-pound bass. You never know. But so I'm sitting there, I'm reeling this thing in, and about halfway through the fight, it starts to rip drag. I mean, it's pull and drag. And I believe I had an Abu Garcia reel, and I can't remember the rod I was using, but that lake had some monster bass in it, so we routinely use like 8, 10, 12-pound tests. I want to say I had 10-pound tests this time, pretty sure. But anyway, so the fight's on, and I realize I've got a good one. And my dad always carried a net in his boat. He had a nitro bass boat, I believe, at the time. It was before he got his tracker boat. We used to do fishing tournaments and stuff on the Columbia River with it. But anyway, so he had a nice net for tournaments and stuff like that. And I'm like, Dad, get the net. This was a big bass, And he's like, yeah, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, it's big. And about that time, I get the bass up to the surface, and it starts flopping. My dad's like, holy shit, dude, that's a big bass. He grabs the net for me and everything. And I'm pretty sure it flopped out of there at one point, but my dad did a really good job. He got down there and netted that sucker, and I'm not joking you. The second that bass was in the net, he spit that lure out. I was that close to losing the biggest bass I've ever caught in my life, and I was shaking. I was just, freaking out. But so we got it in the boat, and I'm besides myself. I'm like literally like a dog crapping out peach seeds. I'm shaking so bad, and my dad's like, damn son, holy crap, it's a big bass and stuff like that. And I'm freaking out, and by that time I'm wide awake. The sleep had long gone, but so I'm on over this thing, and I'm grabbing it, I'm picking it up, and I'm just in shock looking at the lure sitting there on the boat deck. Can't believe that I was that close to losing him. And so my dad gets out the scale, and we hook him up there, and he's flopping around a lot, and it's hard to get a good reading. But by the time he finally settled down, it was right at 10 pounds. And it turns out later on after the fact, so we put this bass in the freezer because I was definitely going to mount it. I'm like, yeah, for sure, this is the biggest bass I've ever caught. And not even a year after that, my dad had went out with my stepmom at the time, and they went back up to Kauai to do like a night fish. And I don't remember what I had going on, but I couldn't go. And he gives me a call. It's like, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night, and he's like, I got the biggest bass of my life. It's huge. It's bigger than yours and all. So I'm like, oh yeah, right, because we used to mess with each other and stuff like that, and we'd act like we caught some big thing. Turns out we didn't get crap, but so I didn't believe him. And he comes home and pulls this bass out of the live well, and I kid you not, he had it weighed. It was 16.25 pounds for a largemouth bass. It made this one back here look like a minnow. It was freaking huge. So, but to get back to what I was talking about with my bass, so after he had caught his, we got a hold of a taxidermist, and we took our bass up to him. I think it was like an hour drive up, or maybe it was, well, I believe it was in Fresno, so it was probably like a 45-minute drive. But anyways, we went up there and dropped our fish off and all that. And whenever we went to pick him back up, 6 months later, however long it was, he told me that both of our bass had a lot of crawfish, crawdads I call them, but a lot of crawdads in their belly. But they had like berries in there. And I'm like, berries? Like, bass don't eat berries. But apparently there was some kind of trees there along the banks of the river, or of the lake, that dropped these weird little berries in there. And I don't know if they had eaten them thinking they were like fish eggs or something, or if they ate them while they were trying to eat the crawdads and they just sucked them in. Because if you see a bass eat, they just open their mouth and, it's gone. So it was kind of weird, but I feel like when it came back from the taxidermist, it didn't look quite as big as when I caught it, of course. But I think it was just, you know, really full at that time when I caught it, and which is why I wasn't fighting as hard. It was pretty lethargic. But yeah, so I would say, well, the bass was 10 pounds when we weighed it. I would say on an empty stomach, it'd probably be smaller than that. You know, it probably had a good amount in there, but it's still the biggest bass I've ever caught. And anyways, yeah, it was one of the coolest fishing days I've ever had in my life, and I'm pissed that I couldn't be there when my dad caught his monster. And I always joke around and tell him, he's like, yeah, son, you know, one of these days you'll catch one like this. And I'm like, yeah, you know, if I was there, I probably would have caught it. So, you know, but we always rib each other like that and stuff. It's fun. But yeah, one of these days I'll have to tell you the story about this guy right here. I know it's hard to see in the picture, but that was a big sturgeon I caught here off the coast of Washington or Oregon. I can't remember. But I was 7 at the time. My dad took me out with his some of his coworkers. He worked up at Oregon Steel Mill, and we went out there and did a sturgeon fishing trip and kind of made a little tournament out of it with put a pool together and all that kind of stuff. I'll tell you about that one at another time. But I love fishing, especially bass fishing. Here where I live, I like to hit the Umpqua River a lot in the summertime, catch a ton of smallmouth bass, and we have a local reservoir up here. As well, that's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 miles west of town here, or I'm sorry, east of town here. And just a couple years ago, I was up there during the spawn, and I caught a really nice bass. Probably would have went about 7 pounds, but I didn't have a scale at the time. And I've got some pictures of it too, so maybe in a future video, I'll throw those pictures in there so you guys can check it out. But this last year, I was up there fishing, and I saw some monster bass, some bigger ones than that. And I know that there's been some 8-pounders, 8+ pounders caught out of here, so I know there's some big ones in there. I'm pretty sure, I want to say the Lake Ricker is like 10 pounds. I could be wrong, but I'd like to get one of those out of there because I know they're there. About, I want to say mid-April is when they start spawning around here, depending on how warm the weather's getting. It's kind of weird because here in the Pacific Northwest, sometimes we'll have winters that are like really, really cold. We get ice storms and snow, and it pushes all that stuff back later in the year. And then there's years like this year where we have super mild winters. We don't get a lot of rain, stuff like that. They'll probably spawn early this year, and the water levels will be lower, water temperature will be up, stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes. But here in the future, I plan on doing some fun fishing videos with you guys. I'll probably do like a gear setup video before that. Just to show you my bass rig and my tackle box that I use out there for catching bass and stuff like that. And I always include other things too, like for like the kids to fish with, to catch a little bluegill or crappie or whatever, you know, if they're getting bored. Because bass fishing takes patience. They're not always out there just biting every 5 seconds, you know. So sometimes you get out there and you can throw anything in the lake and you'll catch fish. Other days, you'll have to bust your ass for 6 hours straight before you catch one, you know. So that's just how it is, but a bad day out on the lake is better than any good day at work, in my opinion. So, but that's it for today's video, guys. I just wanted to share that story with you about the big bass that I caught years ago, and hopefully we'll get some more like this guy on the wall. We can share some more stories about. One more thing, here either this month or next month, pretty soon I should be getting, excuse me, I should be getting my mount back from the buck I got this past hunting season. So I'm going to do a video on that when I put him up on the wall. I'm going to set it up here where the buck mount is next to the bass mount. And I'll probably have a picture of me and the buck, and then I do have a picture of me and this bass somewhere. It's an old school picture. I'm all like scrawny, skinny looking, and freaking jean shorts and no shirt. It's really dorky, but maybe I'll put that picture up there of the bass, and then I can kind of show you guys both of those. So anyways, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and you guys have a great day. We'll see you in the next one.